All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So right now we are going to be talking about introductions. For the sake of time, I am not going to read these two introductions for you. You do need to look at them yourself, though. So obviously, our first question is, which introduction seems better? Now, immediately, everybody's like, oh, student A, because it's longer. However, I need you to really look at it, because just because something is longer does not mean that it's better. Trust me, it does not mean that it's better. That being said, I do think student A has a more well-rounded introduction, so I am going to say that student A seems to have a better introduction. So then we're going to this next section. So what does student A do that student B doesn't? And we're going to make a list. So first, you're going to notice that student B is missing a hook. They start off right off with that tag, which isn't the worst thing, but they are missing a hook. Next, they really don't have much background information. And the information they do have is kind of confusing. Next thing is they have a thesis, but they are missing their third point in the thesis. So the third reason that gas-powered cars were more popular. So what does student A do that student B doesn't? Student B is missing a hook, is missing background information, and is missing the third reason. Could student B's introduction still be good if it was just longer? So if we just added a few more sentences, would it be good? Let's look at it. The Department of Energy wrote the history of the electric car to inform the reader about the electric car's history. Electric cars were more common until 1914 when gas-powered cars became cheaper and more available. In the 1960s to 1970, gas shortages and soaring prices caused Congress to approve of a hybrid car research team. I'm not really sure why that's relevant. Gas-powered cars outsold electric cars during the 1900s because they were much cheaper and more available. So if we just added a few sentences, would it be good? I think probably not. So no, some sentences need to be added and some need to be removed or changed. So I would add a hook, or I'm going to say general background information, and a third reason in the thesis. I would remove the background information. Ooh, can't spell information. Information that's included because it's kind of confusing. So, does either introduction end with a thesis? Yes, they both do. They both did a good job of that. So I'm going to get my little shape out. So yes, and both. Good job. All right, so now we are going to skip down to this next section. Student C has started an introduction for us. Rewrite the introduction below so that it looks more like student A. Here we go. The passage, the electric car, shows why the number of gas-powered cars eventually got more popular than electric cars during the 1900s. A reason why gas-powered cars got more popular is because by 1912, gasoline cars were cheaper than electric cars. The passage states by 1912, gasoline cars cost only $6.50, while an electric roadster sold for $17.50. This is just one reason that gas cars were more known and more people like to use them. But at first, most people like the electric car. So this has some evidence in it, which we shouldn't have in an introduction. It doesn't have a hook. There's no citations for the evidence, and it kind of jumps back and forth. So we need to make it a little bit more streamlined and take out some of the stuff we don't need. So first, electric cars seem like the more modern and better option, but historically this was not always the case. I wrote this as a hook. You can use something different. It's not a very exciting hook. Let's be honest, it's not very exciting. However, it does kind of introduce our topic. Electric cars seem better, but this was not always the case. Then we've got our tag. So this person does a pretty good job with tag. They have the title, they kind of have the genre, but they don't have the author. So you need to have something like the informational article. The history of the electric car by the Department of Energy explores why the number of gas-powered cars eventually became more popular than electric cars during the 1900s. Then we're going straight into that summary or background information, and I kind of modeled it after how the passage goes. So, the electric car has a history of rising and falling in popularity starting in the early 19th century. Despite the electric car's longer history, the gas-powered car quickly surpassed the electric car in usage. However, some may argue that the electric car is once again the future. So if you look at the passage, it talks about the electric car like becoming more popular than the steam and gas. Then it talks about how gas-powered cars got more popular, and then it goes back to electric cars because that is what most people consider the future. So then we need to have a thesis. So gas-powered car outsold the electric car because reason 1, reason 2, reason 3. You can use that. I used the example right here, and I just kind of made it a little bit fancier. So whether the gas-powered car or the electric car is the future, the fact still remains that the gas-powered car outsold the electric car in the 20th century because it was more convenient, more affordable, and allowed Americans the freedom of long-distance travel. So we're going to read that all together and make sure it makes sense. Electric cars seem like the more modern and better option, but historically this was not always the case. The informational article, The History of the Electric Car by the Department of Energy, explores why the number of gas-powered cars eventually became more popular than electric cars during the 1900s. The electric car has a history of rising and falling in popularity, starting in the early 19th century. Despite the electric car's longer history, the gas-powered car quickly surpassed the electric car in usage. However, some may argue that the electric car is once again the future. Whether the gas-powered car or the electric car is the future, the fact still remains that the gas-powered car outsold the electric car in the 20th century because it was more convenient, more affordable, and allowed Americans the freedom of long-distance travel. And that does seem to make sense. So we are going to stop this video here.